week removed from Itauma versus White, and Moses Itauma obviously did the job in just under 2 minutes. So essentially, he's ready to go now, basically. Like, he could literally just, not even a break needed. And that's kind of the rationale of Team Itauma. Obviously, he's managed by Francis Warren, promoted by Frank Warren. Obviously, Francis Warren's the son of Frank Warren. So, yeah, they're pretty much full steam ahead, get him out in the month of December, which is good. Now, I gave my 2 cents on opponents in a previous video who I think he should be potentially in there with. I thought Jermaine Franklin, to me, just seemed like a rational pick. Seemed like a good, just logic tells me, like, give him some rounds. Probably not too dangerous. He's not the biggest puncher. He's not, the most skilled, but he's good enough, and he'll definitely give him rounds. But I think that's unlikely given the fact he's going to be fighting Ivan Ditchko on the Canelo versus Crawford undercard. So I just got to say, draw a line through Jermaine Franklin. Hrgovic was someone who I was mentioning, but of course I did forget he sustained that cut. And obviously, like, it seems to be a recurrent problem for Hrgovic, that cut, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, you do want it to heal. So December, unlikely. All right. I was also mentioning Bacoli, but we're kind of hearing whispers that, he could be, potentially going to be fighting Anthony Joshua. Billy Nelson back with the sparring stories. He's the undisputed sparring heavyweight champion of the world, undefeated, 100-0 in spars. Of course, that's Martin Bacoli. But in reality, Bacoli had one brilliant performance against Jared Anderson where all the stars aligned. And they haven't aligned since. He's been lining up to the buffet, but he ain't been lining up for training. So they were the names I was mentioning. Now, here's the interesting one. Francis Warren, this is from Pro Boxing Fan. This is actually from Francis Warren, something he said on TalkSport, and also Boxing Kingdom, which I'll read now in a sec. Moses Itauma's manager, Francis Warren, has named Kubrat Pulev as a potential opponent next. Boxing Kingdom also say Moses Itauma will return to the ring in December. Itauma's team have recently stated that Pulev and Franklin will be considered for the fight. We obviously know it won't be, well, it's unlikely it'll be Franklin. I mean, even if he beats Ivan Ditchko, 3-month turnaround, depending on the nature. Like, if he wins and he takes no damage, of course, yeah, fair enough. But if he wins, takes damage, 3 months these days is a bit of a, not an ideal turnaround. There's so many variables. If you go in and you blast him out in a couple of rounds, of course, 3-month turnaround, boom, easy, get him out. But you just don't know. So I would say unlikely Jermaine Franklin. But Kubrat Pulev is a name that really didn't come into my mind, and I don't think it came into many others' mind. But when you think about it logically, you think that's actually not a bad shout for an opponent. Now, my one issue with that fight would be if they sold it as a world title fight, because apparently Pulev is the WBA regular champion for what it's worth. It literally means nothing. I mean, Daniel Dubois released a statement earlier this week about his split with Don Charles. And you may remember Daniel Dubois beat Trevor Bryan a couple of years ago. Now, it was 3 years ago, 2022, I think it was, in that ridiculous leisure centre in Ohio, which Don King was just... I felt bad for Dubois actually that night because it just looked so embarrassing. Just that whole event, it just looked ridiculous. But he beat Trevor Bryan a couple of years ago. That was obviously for the regular title. And Dubois, in a recent statement, said he wants to become a 2-time heavyweight champion. So even Daniel Dubois recognises that regular title is just nothing. It's more, to be honest with you, that's more a marketing gimmick, more so than anything else at this stage now, the regular title. You just slap that regular title on and you can say, World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, it's not really though, is it? And that's what Kubrat Pulev has. It's very much a secondary. It's a glorified interim title. It really is. That's essentially what that is. So I wouldn't like them to sell it as a world title fight. I think that would be very disingenuous, and I just wouldn't, because it's not. Itauma beating Pulev and then becoming champion, he wouldn't be legit. You wouldn't recognize it. So that's the one issue. But as a fight of itself, I think it's actually a decent fight. Of course, I would make Itauma a heavy favourite. Pulev is old as dirt now at this stage. His prime has long since come and gone, and even in his prime, he was okay. He was a solid top 10 heavyweight in his prime. Very, very good jab. Decent chin. I know he's been stopped twice, but he's obviously lost 3 fights. He lost to Chisora. He's been stopped twice, but he's only been stopped by Vladimir Klitschko, tremendous puncher, and that was a brilliant performance by Vladimir Klitschko that night. It was one of the few times where Klitschko just, he used all of his tools. You know, everything that night. It's very rare you see that from Klitschko, Vladimir anyway. Just let everything click that night. The left hook was working, his footwork. It was just brilliant. I mean, it's a shame we didn't always see Klitschko like that, because that night in Germany, oh, boy, it was phenomenal. He really was. And that was a much younger, I think it was a prime Pulev as well. And obviously he got stopped by AJ a couple of years ago. And there's no shame in, and that doesn't mean you're chinny being stopped by Klitschko and AJ, because they're tremendous punchers. So I don't consider him being chinny, and I think that he's very much, people were talking about Dylan White, old man, and Moses Itauma. Yeah, Dylan White, obviously that didn't happen, but that's not really, you look back and you say, that's not really Dylan White's MO, to old man someone. It's to go in there and try and, take it to them. Pulev will old man you. He was old man in fighters like Chisora. He was old man in Chisora years ago in their first fight, so he knows what he would do. Again, I wouldn't make him favourite at all. I'd be picking Itauma heavily, but he definitely give him rounds. If nothing else, Pulev would be the guy who would give him rounds. He takes a decent shot. Kubrat Pulev, he does. So I think that he would maybe at the start stand up to a couple of Itauma shots, but ultimately I think the uppercut is something he was definitely prone to getting hit with against Anthony Joshua. And obviously it was the left hook against Vladimir Klitschko that did damage. Swap it up now would be from the southpaw stance with Itauma. But I like it. I like him as an opponent. There is that small issue of him, Michael Hunter, the whole Don King situation. It's just a mess, isn't it? It's just like Hunter gets this fight that he's been craving on a big card, although it's not on the Canelo card. It's basically, the precursor to it. And he gets this whole fight with Jarrell Big Farmer Miller, and he's like, honestly, Michael Hunter is just an absolute screw up in terms of how not to manage your boxing career, because 6 years ago it was like literally everything he was touching was turning to gold, and boom, just like that, it's like everything he touches is just turning to ashes. It's crazy. But all that aside, I would imagine something will get probably. I would imagine Don King, if they pay him enough, he'll let that fight happen between Miller and Hunter, freeze up Pulev, and then he'd want a lot of money, Kubrat Pulev, and I do think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he was talked about as being an opponent for Fabio Wardley on the Ipswich show, wasn't he? Pretty sure he was, and I think basically money was essentially the issue there. And maybe Fabio Wardley would like to obviously get that crack at Kubrat Pulev first. But if they do it for Itauma next, I've got no issue with it. Personally, I think it's actually, decent matchmaking, to be honest with you. I think he'll definitely ask questions of Itauma. He might be older than Dylan White, but he's never been one for going in there and taking it to you like Dylan White would. Takes a better shot than Dylan White, quite frankly, as well, Kubrat Pulev. And yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I would expect Itauma again to win, but it would be interesting. So if they did that fight, I wouldn't be hating on it. Just don't sell it as they will, but we know it's not really for a world title. I mean, when you have Dubois saying, I'm going to become 2-time champion, instead of saying, I want to become 3-time, because he knows that regular title don't mean anything. It's worthless, basically. It's just the PR kind of marketing gimmick. Oh, look, he's the regular. Who's really going to say, I'm the regular champion? What is that? What? You're the regular champion. It's just so, it's ridiculous. They need to get rid of that. Please, God, get rid of that regular belt. It's embarrassing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Let me know yours in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Until next time. Peace.